All right. So kids, just so you know, Hannah is going to be keeping track of who participates. And you guys know how you earn stickers when you go to regular Sunday school towards prizes? So Hannah will decide who of you gets 1 or 2 or 3 stickers, or maybe even a bonus sticker. So the more you guys participate, answer my questions, and let us hear what you're thinking, the more you'll get to work towards your prizes. So just a reminder of that. Okay, here's a question for you. Have you guys ever read a story in the Bible that you did not understand? Raise your hand if you have. So there's some chapters in the Bible, especially the Old Testament, that I will read and I'll be like, okay, that happened. Apparently it was important because God put it in his book, but I have no idea what it means. We're going to talk about one of those today. One of the ones that you can throw it up there, Benny, that first slide. I've read the Bible several times since I've been a Christian. I've been a Christian for over 30 years. And there's still some stories that I don't understand. And one of them is Genesis 15. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because I've been reading this book called Rediscovering Israel. And what it does, it explains these stories from of the things that we read in the Bible. So raise your hand if you were born and raised in America. So that's everyone, right? If Israel's mama was here, she wouldn't be able to raise her hand, right, Israel? Because she's from the Philippines, right? Yeah. But I think she's the only member of our church who wasn't born and raised here in America. Okay. We see things, because we were raised in America, from an American viewpoint. So we call this game that a lot of the kids here played yesterday soccer, right? Where you kick around the black and white ball. In other countries, what's it called? What's football in America? It's not soccer. It's a totally different sport, right? Right? In America, what we call football is something totally different than pretty much the whole rest of the world calls. The rest of the world calls our football American football. We call their football soccer. Is that a little bit confusing? Can you see how things are a little different depending on where you are? So it depends on your culture, what you call that game. What is culture? What does culture mean? Any of you kids know what culture is? Israel. Traditions is a part of it from a different country. Yes, location often determines your culture, right? Culture has to do with the customs, the arts, the social institutions, and achievements of a society, okay? So what are some parts of American culture? We talked about one already. We talked about football, right? What's something else that's American? Sean? What's this holiday we celebrate in July? Yeah, John? 4th of July is all about America. You know, nobody else, in Great Britain, they certainly don't celebrate the 4th of July, because that's when we're lost America, right? So America celebrates, sorry, I lost my microphone. I should put my hair back for this. America celebrates the 4th of July. What's something else that's very American? Jeff has an idea. Yeah?
Might be coming up in a couple months.
What's that? Thanksgiving, yeah, right? Thanksgiving is an American holiday, right? Anybody else? Something that's American? Yeah. Labor Day? Yes. Can we go off of holidays and do something else? Yes, that was what I'd written down. Hamburgers, they're very much an American thing. Anybody else? Any ideas? Yes, Sean? Oh, come on, give me your idea. What'd you say? Nachizos? I don't know what that means. All right, John? The American flag, yes. Pizza is a very American thing, too. The national anthem, yes, of course. Apple pie, although, like, apples are big in German, too, like apple strudel and all that. But, yeah, there's some things that are just really considered American that are a part of our culture. Yes. Baseball, definitely. What, Joe? Yeah, I know. I figured that. Israel, you got one more idea for me? Hot dogs. That's an American thing, too. Yeah. Food has a lot to do with culture. All right. Since the Bible was written, does anybody know where the Bible was written? John, where was the Bible written originally? The Middle East, which is in northern Africa. You're both right. Good job, guys. All right. Since the Bible was written in the Middle East, there are a lot of Middle Eastern culture. There's a lot of Middle Eastern culture in it. Middle Easterners who read these stories, they would understand them because it's a part of their culture, part of what they heard growing up. But for some of us, they can be confusing. So we're going to read Genesis 15. So if anybody wants to go over to Genesis 15 in their Bible, if you want to read along. He doesn't know how to read. I don't know how he's going to read Genesis 15, but that's okay. I'm glad he's enthusiastic about it. All right, so this story's always been a bit of a head scratcher for me, but when I learned the significance of it, I thought it was really, really beautiful, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So that's why I chose Genesis 15. Okay, so Genesis 15 is a story about Abram. His name hasn't been turned to Abraham yet. I'm sorry if I will intermix that because I just do. So maybe I'll just call him Abe. I don't know. But anyway, so this is where we're picking up his story. So you guys remember God called Abraham and told him to go to a different land, right? He said he was going to make him into a great nation. He made a promise to him. Then Abraham, there was a famine, and Abraham went to Egypt. He came back from Egypt. And then he and Lot, which were his nephew, they were traveling together. They had so much properties. Like they had big households. They had a lot of animals that they couldn't exist together. They had to separate. So Abraham came to Canaan. And then the priest Melchizedek came and visited him, and he gave a tithe to Melchizedek. And that's where we are in the story. So Melchizedek has left. Abraham, this is where we are in his story. So he doesn't have any children yet. He hasn't had Ishmael with Hagar, and he hasn't had Isaac with Sarah either. Okay? Okay, verse 1. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward." So how did God come to Abram? Just yell it out. You don't have to raise your hand. Oh, you guys weren't listening? Okay, I'll read it again. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward." How did he come? A vision. You guys can just answer. You don't have to raise your hands for answering these questions, okay? All right, verse 2. But Abram said, "Lord God, what will you give me, seeing I go childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus?" So the heir, was the person who would inherit it, was not his son, because he didn't have any son. It was someone who lived in his household, probably a hire slave, like someone who helped him out a lot. Then Abram said, "Look, you have given me no offspring. Indeed, one born in my house is my heir." All right, my question for you now. What was Abram complaining to God about? No, he came to him in a dream. That was the answer to the last question. Having no children, right? God said he was going to make a great nation out of them, and here we are, no children, okay? So here's our next verses, verse 4 through 6. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "This one shall not be your heir, but one who will come from your own body shall be your heir." Then he brought him outside and said, "Look now toward heaven and count the stars, if you are able to number them." And he said to him, "So shall your descendants be." A descendant is someone who's born after you, right? You have children, they have children, those are your descendants, right? So did God strike Abram dead for asking him questions? No, he didn't, Jane. Isn't that cool? What did he do instead? He answered him, and he gave him a promise, right? God, I've told you guys this many times, I'll tell it to you every time I'm up here. God never discourages us to come to him with our questions. He wants us to, because he's the only one who has the answers, right? And sometimes he doesn't give them to us right away, but if we are coming to him to ask him questions, that means we're in a relationship with him, and that's what he wants more than anything else, all right? So how many descendants did God tell Abram he would give him? As many as the stars. It's more than 5,000. It was a lot, right? All right, so I'm going to read this verse again because you guys might have missed it because we were talking about the descendants. But verse 6 says, and he believed in the Lord, and he accounted it to him for righteousness. So what made Abram righteous? John? No, not gold. You are participating, Asher. That's awesome. John, what made him righteous? All right, I'll read it again. It's a good one. And he believed in the Lord, and he accounted it to him for righteousness. It was what, Israel? His faith. He believed in God. It was his faith that made him righteous. What does righteous mean? Well, that is a good definition because God is definitely righteous. It's not having any wrong in you, not flicking your brother on the forehead. Yeah, a brother is made for adversity. Anyway, there is a lot of beauty in just these first 6 verses. And they are pretty easy to understand, right? They're pretty straightforward. But here's where it gets interesting, at least for me. All right, verse 7. Then he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to inherit it. And he said, Lord God, how shall I know that I will inherit it? Once again, Abram isn't afraid to ask God questions. And we should never be afraid to talk to God about what's going inside our hearts. He knows it anyway. He knows it anyway. The good, bad, and the ugly. He knows all of it. All right, verse 9. So he said to him, so God's saying this to Abram, bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. Then he brought all these things to him and cut them in 2 down the middle and placed each piece opposite the other, but he did not cut the birds in 2. All right, so you guys understand what's happening? You brought these animals, he cut them in half, laid them out. Is that something that normally happens in our culture? No. Anybody know what it means? I do. All right. So what kind of animals were they? Just in review, do you guys remember? A girl cow. 53-year-old cows. Okay, there was a heifer. Everybody say heifer. A goat. A ram. A turtle dove. And a pigeon. All right. It gets even more interesting. So let's continue verse 11. And when the vultures came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. What came down on the carcasses? Right. Now when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and behold, horror and great darkness fell upon him. Doesn't sound like fun, does it? Okay. So what happened to Abram? A deep sleep. Yeah, it says terror and darkness. The literal translation sounds like he was afraid of the darkness, and it was the fear that came on him. I don't know, maybe because it doesn't tell us why. I mean, if there's dead animals laying out in wilderness, what's likely to come towards those dead animals? Well, vultures during the day, but what's going to come at night? The predators, right? Because they smell the blood. So maybe that was it. We don't know. It doesn't say. It's just an interesting side note. I didn't find any concrete information explaining that. So anyway, we'll continue on to verse 13. Then he said to Abram, but it is important to remember that Abram was in a deep sleep. Okay, that's important. All right. Verse 13. Then he said to Abram, know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them, and they will afflict them for 400 years. And also the nation whom they serve I will judge. Afterward they shall come out with great possessions. What's he talking about here, guys? What's God talking about here? Jane. What? A little louder, please. I can't hear you. The people after Abraham, they were going to go into what country were they going to go into? Asher, you know? Germany? No. Jane. They were going into, this is when they went into Egypt, right? They went into Egypt. They were in slavery for 400 years. God brought them out, judged Egypt, and they came out with great possessions, right? With a lot, remember the Egyptians gave, so this is a prophecy. Everybody say prophecy. I did not remember that this was prophesied to Abraham. I did not remember that at all. And I think it's really interesting that even though it was prophesied to Abraham, like his descendants went into Egypt knowing this prophecy, but it said that God would deliver him. So I know. Anyway, it was really interesting. I didn't realize that it was prophesied before. So that was hidden in here. Now we're going to go on to verse 15. Now as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. So he's saying they're going to leave, but they're going to come back. So that was a promise. And it came to pass, when the sun went down and it was dark, that behold, there appeared a smoking oven and a burning torch that passed between those pieces. So it's the pieces of the animal. Remember, animals cut in half like the picture? And then what appeared? What? And a torch. Thank you, Sean. Yes. So when you go into the literal translations, it actually, it's not like the pot appeared. It sounds like it was like the steam that comes up from a pot appeared. So it was like the smoke or the steam that showed up. Okay. So that showed up, and fire. What does this remind you guys of? A pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire. The Exodus. You're right, Sean. The Exodus. So it's like a foreshadowing. It's way God showed up in the same way as he does later on, which I think is so cool. I love to see that kind of stuff. So in the Exodus, God was a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Here with Abraham, he's showing up with both at the same time. And what did the fire and the cloud do in the story? I'm talking about this story to Abraham that we just read. What they did is they passed through. So they went in between the two halves of the animals over the river of blood. Okay, that's what they did. You guys with me? It's kind of a complicated story. You guys will have listened to 2 whole chapters today. The one that Jeff read and the one that I read. All right, 17. And it came to pass when the sun, I'm going back just a little bit to recap it, okay? And it came to pass when the sun went down and it was dark, that behold, there appeared a smoking oven and a burning torch that passed between those pieces. On the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your descendants, to who? Descendants. I have given the land from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. The Canaanites, the Kezites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. Don't judge me on my ites. All right. He was given that land to them. All right. Because we went slowly through this chapter and asked a lot of questions, we got a lot of meaning from the story. But we still didn't get the full meaning. Ash, are you ready to hear what the story really means? Okay. Then you have to close your mouth. But if we had been raised in the Middle East, we have easily understood what the story meant, what the whole cutting of the animals in half and the river of blood and passing through it. And we're going to show you, the kids and I are going to show you. Jeff, I don't know if you want to zoom out the video so they'll be able to see it. And also, what about Abraham taking a nap in the middle of this significant story about God doing a covenant with him? Okay, so I need volunteers. John's got his knife ready. John's going to come up. Come on up, John. What about a gun? No, they don't use a gun for this. Okay. And I need Israel. Why don't you come up too? And Blake, will you be a volunteer? If you don't want to, I can ask Lily.
No.
I already asked you. Okay, Lily, come on up. Okay. Thank you, Lily. So come on over on this side. Lily, Israel's going to be your daddy. And Asher is going to be John's son. And Asher and Lily are going to get married. Because this is actually a picture of a marriage ceremony. They don't practice this as commonly in Israel, but actually some families still do. So, Lily, you might want to get on your knees so it's more realistic. There you go. You come over here, Asher. It looks like Joe's going to be the best man. Okay, so Asher is the son of a poor man. And Lily is the daughter of a rich man. Yay, Israel. So, Asher really wants to marry Lily. John really wants Asher to marry Lily. So, John, Asher's dad, is going to perform a ceremony. Come in here, John. So, we're going to pretend this is our heifer. Take the heifer. Yep, bring it on over here. No, listen to me. Okay. John's going to cut it in half. Pretend to. There you go. Good job, John. And he's going to lay it down. Now go ahead and lay it down, John. Don't argue with me. All right. And what was the next animal? Anybody remember? It was a goat. Good job. We don't have a goat, but we have a Pegasus. So cut the Pegasus and lay it down. There you go. Lay it down. All right. Anybody remember what the next animal was? Sean's totally right. If you can tell those pictures, it's got horns. It's a ram. We don't have a ram, but we have another Pegasus. Oh, no, that one does have wings, so it's just a unicorn. There we go. Lay it down. Okay. And then birds. I didn't have any birds except for these little Noah's Ark birds. So we got a rooster and we have a peacock. Yep. No arguing with me. Just kill it like I told you to. There you go. Okay. The narrator is always right. Terry is very wise. Okay. This is going to be our river of blood. So you got to lay them out here. They're not in half. We'll have to pretend they're in half. Put the birds down there, John. One on each side. There you go. Turtle, dove, and a pigeon, right? Yeah. Okay. So we've got the groom on one side. We have the bride on the other. Now in this ceremony, they're standing on each side of the river of blood. There's the sacrifice. This man is rich. He's the greater one. This man is not rich. He is the poorer one. So in this ceremony, the poorer one always goes first. And so what he does is he says to this rich man, if my son is not faithful to your daughter, may I be as these animals are. And then he walks through the pieces, through the blood. No, not you, Asher. Okay. And then the rich man goes next, and he says, if my daughter is not faithful to your son, may I be like these animals. And he walks through the pieces as well. And I believe that the groom and the bride walk through it together. Good job, Lily. So this is where the lovely ceremony of walking down the aisle comes from. Aren't you glad that our churches don't do blood for their weddings? But it was a serious thing, right? Marriage is considered very sacred and very serious. And so is the covenant that God and Abram made together. All right, kids, good job. Give them a hand. That's okay. Just leave it there. And I'm going to grab a drink of water because I forgot my water. Okay, sit down, guys. In the proper spot, Asher. Thank you. All right, guys. So how was this marriage covenant ceremony like the story that we read about the covenant between Abram and God? How was it similar? Yes, Jane. Because of the blood, she said, and because God was faithful to Abraham. That's right. Anybody else? Any other? That's pretty good. Yes, Sean? And it has the animals in it too. Yep. Yeah, we do flower petals for our brides to walk on, not rivers of blood. Very interesting how it's different. Okay, so how was this ceremony different from the one between Abram and God, though? How was it different? Israel. It wasn't marriage, but it was a covenant. How was it different, guys? There's smoke and fire instead of a bride and groom. What was Abram doing during this covenant? Sleeping. Was this a natural sleep? No. Okay. You guys, God knew that Abram would not be able to keep this covenant. He knew he would be unfaithful for it. So God put Abram to sleep, and he was the one who went through. Even though he was the greater party, he was the one who went through. It's a really big deal, guys. It's a really, really big deal. God knew that Abram's descendants wouldn't keep the covenant. Even in the next chapter, Abram is having a baby with Hagar outside of his marriage. Like he's not even keeping the covenant in the next chapter. But because God knew he wouldn't be able to do that, he passed through on his behalf. It's amazing. It's really amazing. Anyone who says the God of the Old Testament is mean or they don't understand him, they just don't understand him because he's not mean. That is incredible mercy. All right. Next slide, please, Benny. All right. This is a photo from an article that I read recently that made me kind of sad. It's interesting, but it made me kind of sad. So in this picture, this is what the outside of the statue looks like. It's an over 1,000-year-old Buddha statue. And they actually, through imaging, found out that inside the statue is a skeleton of a monk. And this monk did this to himself through a process called self-mummification. Sounds fun, huh? It's called a living Buddha. That's what this is called, okay? So self-mummification took over 10 years. How long did it take? Right. So for 10 years, Joseph, please get off the stage. Asher, you too. Thank you. So for 10 years, this monk slowly starved his body by eating only nuts, berries, tree bark, and pine needles in less and less amounts to reduce his body fat and moisture. Sounds delicious, right? He ate herbs, cycad nuts, sesame seeds to stop bacteria from growing inside his body. He drank a poisonous tree sap to embalm himself and repel insects. And after years of doing this, he was buried alive in an underground chamber. And there was a tube made out of bamboo that went from the top of the chamber to inside the chamber through the ground that he would breathe through. He sat in the lotus position and chanted and ringing a bell every day to signal that he was still alive. And then when he stopped breathing, then they didn't hear the bell dinging anymore. The tomb was sealed up. This was a real person. This really happened to him. 3 years after the tomb was sealed up, his body was removed and completely mummified, and then taken to a temple to be revered, if it worked. The actual chances of self-mummification working were extremely low. They were 10 to 25%. So only 1 out of 2 of the people who did this to themselves actually became a mummy. The rest, their bodies were exorcised and buried. And so that's what happened to most of them. Does that sound like fun? No. This is the only mummified monk they've found in a statue so far. They have found other ones, but they're, like I said, extremely rare because the process did not work very often. 10 years. How many years? 10 years. This person spent 10 years of his life killing himself because he thought that's what his God wanted him to do. It makes me want to cry because I think like he could have spent that 10 years loving people like God wants us to do. He could have found God, like the real God, in those 10 years. He could have had children because the Hindu monks were allowed to have children. It's sad. It's really sad. But I compare it to what God asked of Abraham. What did God ask of Abraham in our story? He had to bring the sacrifice, right? He had to bring the animals. But Abraham was really rich, so rich that he couldn't even live next to his nephew, right? So that wasn't a huge sacrifice for him. And then what did he have to do after he killed the animals? Do you guys remember? Has to do with vultures. Young men, get off the stage. Get off the stage. If you don't listen, Grandma's going to have to take you out there. So he had to keep off the vultures, right? That was probably hot, sweaty work, right? It was all day long. He spent scaring vultures away. And it was probably stinky because he's got dried blood to deal with at the same time and decaying corpses. But it's not starving himself for 10 years, right? He killed the animals. It was a small sacrifice. He guarded the sacrifice. And then what did he do? He went to sleep. Doesn't sound like it was a pleasant sleep, but it was a sleep. And then what did God do? God went he made the covenant on his behalf because he knew he couldn't hold it up. Hebrews 6:13-14 says, "For when God made a promise to Abraham, because he could swear by no one greater, he swore by himself, saying, 'Surely, blessing I will bless you, and multiplying I will multiply you.'" God does what he says he will do. And he's the one who does the heavy lifting in the relationship. And like Jesus on the cross, just like Jesus on the cross did when he died for us, he did all the work. We just need a little bit of obedience. We need to trust him. Remember, that's what made Abraham righteous. It wasn't because he could pass through the animals. It was because he had faith in God. And even when we mess up, he has us covered with the blood. And his power is made perfect in our weakness. That's what 2 Corinthians 12:9 says. His grace is enough. So that's what Genesis 15 is about. We can go to the next slide. Yeah. With the cut up animals and the blood and the fire and the steam, it's all about God stepping in on your behalf and doing for you what you cannot do for yourself. It's amazing. And it's a very basic message about salvation, but it's the most important message. Because we are humans, like the Israelites in the desert, or anybody else in the Bible. We forget sometimes. But God loves you so much, he'll put you to sleep and do your work for you. It's pretty amazing. All right, Benny's I think you're gonna do communion. Is that right, Benny? Okay. Do you need this?